Okay, Frankenfood. Can you take regular food and create a whole new kind of food? Apparently you can. We've got a couple of people on the call who are going to talk all about that. And then we'll get into a conversation about some of the implications that follow from the idea that you can create entirely new breeds of food. This one has really spun me out. And then if that's not crazy enough, mud flood theory. This is blowing up in 2019. This will be one of the trends in the act realm is mud flood theory. So we'll be talking about that and so much more today. This is JLB Member Discord Call Open House episode 16 on the 6th of January 2019, our first member call of 2019. And boy, have we got a packed house today. So let's jump straight into it and introduce the guests on the panel. In alphabetical order, we've got Hilly coming to us from the United States. And I should remember, was it Minnesota? Tell me, Hilly, which part of the US are you coming to us from today?
Right, you are.
Minnesota, fantastic. And this is your second appearance on the member Discord calls?
It is.
Sensational. Well, you would have seen that a couple of days ago I released a video talking about Monsanto and the evil Monsanto meme, and that's been getting a bit of traction. Did you manage to check that one out?
I did. I was having fun responding to the comments.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk about that and more in just a moment. Let's go out to the Midlands of the UK. Good to have another European on these calls. First time in a while. TNG from the Midlands, good to have you back.
Hello there. It's good to be back.
Excellent. And you're the one who brought up the mud flood theory in the pre-call. And for the first time in a long time, I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's talk mud flood. What are you going to be talking about today?
Well, we've got lost civilizations. We've got flooding. We've got so many implications that come from the mud flood. But then it completely is an opposing theory with the history hoax on this site. So, it's all very interesting.
It could be seen as an opposing theory, but you could also see these things as overlapping. So we'll talk about that later in the call. And let's go out to Queensland, not too far from where I'm at. I'm in Brisbane. What's Up Sporty's in a slightly more regional area. Good to have you back on the call, Russell. It's been a little while.
Yes, sorry about that. But yes, well, it's really good. I've been, business and life and that sort of stuff takes you doing other things, but good to be back.
And I understand that one of the things that prompted you to join us was that in last week's call, you would have heard us speaking about genetics and the way that food and other things in this world might not be what we think they are. And I'm being very vague here, but basically it sounds like this prompted you to get back into the calls.
Well, that was a good reason to get back in the cause, but also time availed. So, as I say, I'm in a rural area, and to have these types of conversations, this place is really the only venue open to me.
You're telling me. Well, why don't we get into the JLB trivia? This is one of the most popular parts of the entire JLB operation. I wish I started doing it sooner, but it's better late than never. And we've got no Fung and no Dante on the call, so there's going to be a new champion in about 10 or 15 minutes' time. So let's find out who that's going to be. But first, let's test those buzzers. So let's go out to Minnesota, Permaculture Hill. Hilly, as we're calling you. Test that buzzer.
Ping, ping, ping.
TNG from the Midlands. And this might be your first trivia. Correct me if I'm wrong. Test that buzzer.
Buzz.
No, it's not your first trivia. I remember that buzz. And Russell, this is definitely your first trivia. Test that buzzer.
Beep.
Nice and simple. All right. So let's get into the questions then. And we don't deduct points if you get it wrong. But some of these questions, you might want to hear the question before you buzz in, because once you get it wrong, you're out of that particular question. Let's get into question number 1. With the initials SF, when a claim or argument is presented in the format of premise, conclusion, this might be referred to as its...
Ping, ping, ping.
Hilly from Minnesota.
Standard form argument.
Standard form. And if you had to explain this concept to someone who'd never heard of it in the space of 30 or 60 seconds, how would you try to explain the standard form argument to a regular person?
I would say it's a way of looking at somebody's claims. So when you make a claim, you can usually back those things up with facts. We would call them premises in the standard form argument. And those premises should lead to your conclusion. So this is a good framework that we can both look at the claim and judge its validity by looking at its premises and its conclusion.
Excellent. Yeah, the key word there is framework. So the standard form argument or the standard form is just a framework for looking at what people are trying to communicate to each other. So generally, if someone's trying to explain something to you or to tell you that something is true, they'll be presenting to you what can be rearranged as a standard form. So they might say, oh, well, if you go and do this, then this will happen. They're giving you an argument. You know what the conclusion is. That's their overall thing they're trying to tell you. But what is that based on? And those are the premises. So if I'm trying to tell you, oh, don't go to that part of the world at that time of year, well, why am I saying that to you? It might be because they've got bad weather there, and I know that you hate bad weather. So the premises are that place has bad weather, and you hate bad weather, therefore don't go to that part of the world. And then you can say to me, well, actually, you're quite correct that that place has bad weather, but you're wrong. I love bad weather now. I've been living in Melbourne for 10 years. I've gotten used to it, right? So when you break it down into standard form, you can look at if somebody is incorrect about something, where in their belief system or where in their claim have they gone wrong? You can look at the premises and the conclusion independently and assess it that way. So it's like a framework, and it's very useful. So that's a good response, by the way. So we've got one question out of the way. Hilly's in the lead on 1 point. Let's move on to question number 2. This is a 2-part question, by the way. According to the mainstream or official model of the Earth's cosmology, the masses of the Moon, planets, and the Earth itself can be determined with a rudimentary torsion balance and some mathematical equations. Question A is, who is credited with inventing that rudimentary experiment?
Us.
TNG from the Midlands.
Henry Cavendish.
Henry Cavendish. If you had to explain the torsion balance to a layman, how would you go about it?
I probably wouldn't. I'd probably laugh too much and not be able to explain it, to be honest, because it's so patently ridiculous. It's unbelievable.
I call it the Achilles heel of heliocentrism, and I have had grown adults argue with me live on the air about this, calling me the crazy one. They've ganged up on me 3 or 4 or 5 at a time, calling me the crazy one. And I'm like, guys, do you really believe anyone has ever determined the mass of the Earth with heavy balls in a shed? And of course, if they're a scientism devotee, believer, advocate, yeah, they have to believe that. That's the story. That you can determine the mass of the entire Earth and the Moon and Mars and Jupiter. Just point at a planet, you can determine its mass, thanks to Henry Cavendish, TNG. This is the world we live in today.
It's got to be true, isn't it?
Well, the experts wouldn't lie, would they?
No, of course not. And they are the authority.
Well, you've got 1 point, and you now get first dibs at part 2 of this question. So part 2 is, whose laws of planetary motion are involved in the equation?
It has to be Einstein.
Incorrect. So I'll open it up to the rest of the panel. When you use Henry Cavendish to determine the mass of, say, the Moon, for instance, you're also using somebody else's equations. Who is that person?
Ping, ping, ping.
Hilly from Minnesota.
Sir Isaac Newton.
Incorrect. So it's down to you, Russell. You get a free hit at this. There was a person who hundreds of years ago, even before Henry Cavendish, had come up with laws of planetary motion, and you use those laws of planetary motion with the outcome of the Cavendish experiment to determine the mass of the planets. With the initials JK, can you name that person? Time's up. No, it was Johann Kepler, guys. The Kepler's laws of planetary motion, and basically it's by using those laws of planetary motion. There's mathematical equations that he offers. You use those with the alleged mass of Earth, and you can determine the mass of the other planets. That's basically how it works. If people want more information about that, just go to the Cavendish page at johnlebon.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes of this call, and you can learn more about it. And the cool thing is, this isn't my opinion, guys. I'm just telling you what the official story says if you go and study it. Because at school, we're told, oh, the Earth is spinning and going around the sun. And it's like, well, maybe it is. But we're generally not taught the minutiae of the Cavendish experiment or of Kepler's laws of planetary motion. And if you take the time to learn about it, and think, hold on, this is the official story, you might come to the same conclusion as me, which is that this is a load of phony baloney. Anyhow, so we've got 2 points on the board. We've got Hilly on 1 point, and who got that one right? TNG on 1 point. Let's move on to question number 3. Circa 2012, 2 books were published on the topic of synchromysticism. Who edited those books?
Ping, ping, ping.
Hilly from Minnesota.
Is it Alan Green?
Alan Aberdessa Green. That's close enough. Tell me, what do you know about Alan Aberdessa Green?
I don't know a whole lot about him. I bought the Sync Book 1 and read a few chapters out of it. I don't remember his chapter and can't really say anything about him.
Interesting. This is one of the people who, me looking back now, over the last 5 or 6 years, has had a pretty profound influence on my direction in life. And that might sound like a gigantic statement. Some guy you've never met had a large influence. Yeah, because the Sync Book, his books, his website, the podcasts, over the last couple of years, they've captured my fascination and helped me to reevaluate certain topics. So even though I've never met this Alan Green guy, and I don't even necessarily agree with a lot of what he says, his work has had a large influence on me. And Hilly, can you tell me, if you had to explain to a regular person what are the Sync books all about, what would you say to them?
I would say it's a collection of internet bloggers and personalities that are either writing about synchronicity in general, or are kind of cataloging or stories that they have in their life, or cataloging popular culture and synchronicities surrounding those.
That's a good explanation. Yeah, cataloging or taking a look at analysing synchronicities or so-called coincidences in pop culture, movies, and even their own lives. And is sync a topic that you're particularly interested in, Hilly, or is it just like a passing interest?
I'm really interested in it. I haven't done a whole lot of reading about into the Sync book and exploring their website and things like that. But as far as paying attention to synchronicities in my own life, I've been 100% paying attention to them and trying to talk about them as much as possible, even with everyday people in my life, because I feel like normal people can relate somewhat to these synchronicities, especially compared to conspiracies.
Excellent. Yeah, synchromysticism. Well, if people are interested, if you haven't heard it already, member Skype call, I think it was number 26, we spoke about the Sync books specifically. And if you haven't already bought yourself a copy of at least one of those books and you like to read, because a lot of people don't like to read these days, which is a shame, but if you like to read, I can't recommend the Sync book, especially the first one, enough. So I'll put a link to that in the info box below, the member Skype call, where we spoke about that topic. So we've got Hilly on 2 points, TNG on 1. Next question. On what date, according to the official story, was the ground broken during construction?
Buzz.
TNG from the Midlands.
It was on the 11th of September.
In what year?
It was 60 years before 2001, wasn't it? So it was yeah.
No, you're almost there. I'm happy to give you another second here to answer it. You're pretty much on the money. So 60 years before 2001?
Yeah, 1940. Damn.
Come on, bro. 2001 minus 60.
1941.
There we go, 1941. And the year is important because it leads on to the follow-up question, which is, in 1941, which book was purportedly written by Aleister Crowley?
Oh, is that the Thelema 90?
No, we'll open it up to the panel. So in 1941, supposedly, Aleister Crowley wrote one of the books that he's most well known for in 1941. So this is open to the panel. Can anyone tell me what book that was?
Ping, ping, ping.
Hilly from Minnesota.
Was it Liber Oz?
Liber Oz. Excellent. Yeah, so what does that mean? We've got TNG on 2, Hilly on 3. Yeah, so Liber Oz. If you can't answer this one, Hilly, I'm not going to be too fussed about it. This is, now we're getting to real minutiae of stuff, but it's fascinating to me. Can you tell me more about Liber Oz, or the significance of the name, at least?
Well, I listened to, I think, member Skype call 21 or Discord 21, whichever one it was, on Aleister Crowley the last couple of days. And I can't say a whole lot besides, Oz being 77, Aim
Bingo.
and Zane.
Okay, no, you got it. So Liber Oz and Liber 77, they're the same thing. Oz is 77 in Hebrew gematria, and that book is known interchangeably as Liber Oz or Liber 77. Now, here's the relevance for those of you who are new to johnthebond.com and you haven't checked out Sync and you're thinking, what the hell is this guy on about? Here's the relevance. Can anyone tell me, this isn't for a point, this is just a general question. Can anyone tell me what flight number flew into the Pentagon?
93.
No, 93 was Shanksville.
Oh, shit.
Double sevens.
77. So Flight 77 flew into the Pentagon. The Pentagon, the first ground was turned, or the ground was broken on 11 September 1941. And in 1941, a book was released by Aleister Crowley entitled Liber Oz, i.e. Liber 77. So you've got like a 3-point coincidence triangle going on. But of course, what were the other flight numbers in the 2001 event? Flight number 93, and 93 equals Thelema. It's the number of Thelema. And what were the other two flight numbers? The two that went into the towers were 175 and 11. Add them to 180 to each other, you get 186. Divide by the two towers, 93. In other words, the average flight number that went into the towers was 93. The other flight into Shanksville was 93. So in other words, Thelema. The one into the Pentagon, 77. The Pentagon was created or the first soil was turned on 11 September 1941, which was the year that Aleister Crowley released Liber Oz. And it actually goes a bit further than that as well. And we discuss all of that in Member Skype call number 21, as Hilly has just explained to us. So if you're new to all of this, I don't blame you if you're like, man, JLB, I like some of his stuff, but this stuff is crazy. That's fair enough, but I would have said the same thing 2 years ago. And a lot has changed since then. For better or for worse, only time will tell. So we've got Hilly on 3 points, TNG on 2. This is the final question for today's trivia. This is a Who Am I? Buzz in whenever you think you know who I am. I was born in present-day Croatia in 1856. I was a great inventor who wrote many newspaper articles. I claimed to have communicated with Martians and to have TNG from the Midlands.
This is Tesla.
Nikola Tesla. Yeah, tell us, what's your opinion on Tesla, TNG? Tell us what you used to think, and if there's any change, what you think today about this character that we call Nikola Tesla.
Well, I used to believe that Nikola Tesla was an incredible superhuman being who invented lots of free energy devices, and it was so amazing that he got his name on a new car. But I don't believe any of that stuff anymore, any whatsoever. As somebody on this show decided to find out and do some digging on where the stories came from, and it's quite obvious now that Mr. Tesla is a complete fake. So that's my opinion now.
It's obvious to me, TNG, that the Nikola Tesla character is a fake character. And I remember when I was at first I wasn't convinced. I was like, this can't be, because someone else would have exposed this by now, right? There's a whole truth movement and everyone talks about Tesla, so people must have double-checked and seen what I've seen, so I must be wrong about this. So I put the idea out there. Have we been deceived about Tesla? And of course, what did I get back at first? Vitriol. And then I realized, oh, hold on, this is another one of those sacred cows. And of course, sacred cows, is anyone double-checking sacred cows? No, they're not. It's just something they believe in. And that was all, 2016? I started doing this. And then you fast forward a little while, and I'm now convinced, Tesla, completely fake character. If this is the first you've heard of this, just check out the Tesla page on johnthebond.com. Of course, I'm speaking to the listeners now. Just check it out on johnthebond.com. Go and have a look at the Tesla page. And I'm convinced, Nikola Tesla, complete hoax. But we've got a problem now, guys. We've got 2 contestants on 3 points. So we're going to have to go to a tiebreaker question. Buzz in as soon as you think you know the answer. Who am I? I wrote Watchmen and I wrote V for
Ping, ping, ping.
Buzz.
Healy got in there first from Minnesota.
Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. Tell us a little bit about Alan Moore.
Can't say a whole lot. I just know he wrote V for Vendetta and The Watchmen, graphic novels.
Do you only know that because we were discussing it last week or the week before?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I've seen V for Vendetta, and that's about it. That's all I know.
You know, the funny thing about the film version of V for Vendetta is the guy who plays V is Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving plays supposedly the bad guy in The Matrix. But of course, if you look into The Matrix further and do your own analysis, you might realize that the bad guys might not be the bad guys. And we can talk more about that later in the call or in a different call. But yeah, Hugo Weaving, fascinating character, who I saw for the first time when I was a little child being programmed by TV in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Yeah? So when I was a little child watching TV, I was being programmed by drag queens in a bus going through the Australian outback. And then years later, I would see the same character playing the agent in The Matrix, and then V in V for Vendetta. So programming, guys, it can mess with your brain. But anyway, you are the champion, Hilly, of the Member Discord Call Trivia. Congratulations. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels fantastic. I knew it had to happen one of these days.
Well, your path was made a little bit easier by the absence of Fung and Dante, the two heavyweights of the trivia. But you know what? I think even if they were here, you would have given them a good run for their money. What say you?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. There you go. He's throwing down the gauntlet, guys. Next time you're back, Dante and Fung, you better watch out. There's a new big man on campus. And what that means as the winner of the trivia is that you get to decide which topic are we talking about first. In this Member Discord call, are we talking about Frankenfood or about the mud flood theory?
Let's start it off with the Frankenfood.
Excellent. So let me just give a little bit of context to this conversation. Last week in Member Discord Call 15, which I entitled Goodbye 28 Gene, which I thought was a pretty clever play on words. No one's mentioned it. Maybe people thought it sucked, but I thought that was pretty clever. Anyway, we spent a lot of the call talking about genetics. What do we know about genetics? And what are some of the implications of thinking about what we think we know about the information, the molecular or the structural information, the helical structure of DNA and this kind of things. When we take a step back and think about what do we really know about the information in our bodies and the information in the food that we eat, sort of, if you think through that, where does that take us as a thought experiment, I suppose, is a broader idea of what we were discussing. And on this call today, Hilly, we've got yourself, you grow food. We've got Russell, he grows food. I've seen videos of Russell growing his food. I know for a fact he does it. I've seen photos of you with your food. I know for a fact that you do it. So you guys grow your food, you document it. And so I'm looking forward to this chat today. We're talking about Frankenfood. And in the pre-call, we were discussing how even regular people like you and Russell can create your own freaks of nature. And I'm using the word freak somewhat facetiously. You're able to create your own cultivars of food by what, mashing things together? I don't know. So I'm hoping that you and Russell can inform me and the listeners, what exactly is it that you do when you're producing these new types of food? And once you've given us an idea of that, take a few minutes, both of you, to do so. Once you've done that, we'll get into a conversation about some of the implications that follow from all of this. And hopefully that's enough of a background context for you. So let's go to Hilly, and then you just spend a few minutes explaining this to us. Then we'll go to Russell. You guys tell us, when you're creating these new foods, what are you doing?
Okay, so I guess the best way to explain it would be just with a specific example. So let's go with something like a leafy green. Let's say arugula. It's a tasty leafy green. If you never had it, gotta have it. Anyways, so when typically arugula will bolt, it'll go to seed after a few cuttings. And at that point, you can take these seeds and replant them. So to accentuate certain traits, if there is a freak in your initial planting of arugula, one plant that grew way faster than all the others, or one plant that had way bigger leaves or way tastier leaves, way spicier leaves, any kind of trait, you can pick that plant, save the seeds from that plant, and accentuate that trait. And you can do this year after year and produce freaks of nature.
All right, that's a good introduction. So give us a bit more information. I know that we discussed a couple of weeks ago on your debut on the website the fact that you do work, your actual job, how you make money is working in producing food. Just refresh our memories for us. When did you get into food production? And tell us more about your, I don't want to say expertise, but your experience with food production.
Yeah, so I got into growing food in college. I was going to school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and there was a really nice urban farm there. It was a nonprofit organization in a really poor part of town that had greenhouses and about 3 acres that was actually zoned agriculture. And they were composting food waste and turning this into soil compost and growing nutritious vegetables in the city. So it was super inspirational to me. I interned there when I graduated college and then got a job there and worked my way up and was running the headquarters farm there. And they did aquaponics, mushroom cultivation, microgreens, chickens, goats, honey, everything. We really packed it in there. And that's what was so cool about that place. And I was able to learn a whole lot about a bunch of different agricultural practices. And from there, I went down to Phoenix and worked on a composting operation with my brother. We were composting food waste, turning it into soil, and growing produce with the soil. And our plan was to build it up to the point that we could really start selling produce. But I had to leave that just due to family issues and come back to Minnesota. And now I work at a medium-sized organic farm. We do about 1/3 of our sales is CSA, so community supported agriculture. A family signs up for a basket of produce every week, and they come to the farm and pick it up. And then 2/3 of our sales is wholesale produce, organic vegetables.
Excellent. So you got into agriculture in your college days, and so you've been doing this kind of thing for years now. When was the first time you produced your own combination food, or what word do you even use for it? Again, like you're talking to someone, me, who is practically clueless about all of this. When you create a new splice of food, what do you call it? A cultivar? What word do you use?
I would say seed saving. That's really what you're doing, is saving seeds. But when you're saving seeds, you can do it strategically by saving seeds of particular plants that did something unique.
Okay, and again, don't be afraid to offend me, because I'm quite happy to tell people, look, there are some topics I do consider myself an expert in, but there's heaps of topics I don't know anything about. So treat me like an idiot, because I kind of am. You're saying that in the space of a few years, or even a few seasons, just by saving the seeds of slightly different versions of a plant, eventually you can come up with what seems like pretty much a different plant, is what you're saying.
I don't have direct experience in exactly that. What I can say is you can take a spicy pepper and make it spicier, for instance. That's all the kind of experience that I really have.
Oh, okay. So it still looks the same, but it just tastes different.
Yeah, or colors. You could also, so that's how you get colorful cauliflower, like orange cauliflower, purple cauliflower. You take mutations and you save the seeds of those mutations and produce, accentuate those traits.
And have you done this in your own experience, taken one plant, let's just use the word plant in a broad sense, and had it, by saving the seeds and then growing those seeds, been able to change the color of a plant? Have you actually done this yourself? No,
I personally have not. Definitely have not.
Do you know what time frames it usually takes people to make these kinds of changes?
No. That's a really good question. Something I don't know. And that would be a very specialized individual that works for a seed catalog, for instance, works at a farm so farms don't typically save their own seeds. They buy seeds from farms that specialize in producing seeds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. And to give more context for you guys and for the listeners, only in the past week or so have I come to learn that broccoli Okay, this vegetable that I thought was healthy, I still think could be healthy. That's not the issue here. The issue is I just I assumed, hadn't even thought about it, that this vegetable has been around for a long, 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 long time. Turns out that even according to the official story, broccoli is a man-made food. Somewhere in Italy a couple hundred years ago, maybe 300 years ago, I think the official story is, somebody somehow took some other plant and raised that into broccoli and apparently into kale as well and these other things. So these vegetables that I thought had been their own unique thing for so long, even according to the official story, not really. And so I've been thinking through the implications of this. Well, how many of the plants or the vegetables or the fruits that we eat that we think are these long-term natural things that humans have realized are healthy for us, they're not anywhere near as natural as we thought they were. And so that's kind of what I'm exploring at the moment. Let's go to Russell, who's here in Queensland. People who are interested, you can hear Russell on member Skype call number 11, where we spoke about health and well-being. And Russell explained there that he grows his own food at his own house, his own little suburban farm, I suppose, if you want to call it that. Russell, give us a quick recap of what you do with food, how long you've been working with food, and then we'll start discussing the Franken foods.
Well, yeah, I run it's classified as maybe an urban farm. I don't have quite the setup most people have there, but John, can I put a link of an aerial photograph of where it is into the chat?
Absolutely, you can. And what I'll do for the listeners is in the show notes of these calls, every time I upload one of these calls in the official member post, there's always a links and other information section. And that's where I'll put links to anything that's relevant to the call. So for this call, for instance, you'll see a link to Hilly's first call, which I think was member Discord 14, and then to a couple other pieces that I think are relevant. So what I'll do is, Russell, I'll put the photos that you provide in the show notes of this call.
Yeah, terrific. Well, I'll have to compress the file because it just said that it's too big for it, so I'll run it through Handbrake and send it up a little bit later if you like. But because it's just it's a drone footage of where I've got the garden, But in trying to answer your question, yeah, I supply cut greens for local produce here, and I have my own farm gate stall here, and I sort of specialise in strawberries for this area here, But getting back to something you said before is that I'm in that area where I'm more seed saving than I am totally experimenting with different varieties because, you've got to, as you say, start with a particular strain, but you can, once you've sort of figured out and what was said before with about the collecting particular plants that do really well, you select that seed out and just keep it and just know it does well in your area. It's when you sort of get more to hybridizations of things that it'll have characteristics of its parent's type, but it will not seed out as to what its hybrid vigor was or something like that, And you can play around with that, but it's not something I particularly do. So it sounds very similar as I just keep my strains that do well in my garden and breed out from them.
Okay, so how long have you been growing your own food? When did you first get into planting, growing, managing, eating your own food?
Oh, mate, I've been doing this over 30 years,
Wow, 30 years. And so in that time, I don't mean to interrupt you, in that time, could you quantify or could you kind of describe to us the variation through seed saving, whenever you began that practice, the difference between the final product as it is today versus the original plant? I'm not sure if this question is making sense, but how much variation have you been able to foster through the seed saving practice?
I particularly have really added nothing to it, to what is known as heirloom varieties and these other variations of it. What I started with is with open pollinated seeds, which you can get through various organisations, and they are, part of heirloom breeds, which has been around for a while. But as what you said before, their original form was something that, got bred out of, as you said before, you mentioned a broccoli. I think its original source was like wild cabbage or something like that, you know. So I've been just using what's open pollinated seeds that are available, or what they call heirloom, and then putting them, because what that enables you to do is to use that seed to grow on for the next seasons. As I said before, once you start getting into hybrid stuff, it doesn't go true to form.
I see. So you guys are both seed saving the seeds of the plants that perform the best, or that you like the most because they're the most spicy or whatever. So last week or a couple of weeks ago, someone mentioned that, no, it was last week on last week's call, Cold Square 7 from Texas mentioned that one of his friends grows his own herbs, let's put it that way. And these herbs, his friend grows herbs that smell like a lemon. And I hadn't heard of herb growers specifically growing their herbs to smell like lemon, but straight away I was like, well, actually, this makes sense because there's tons of strains of these herbs that are being legalized to the point where, why am I using euphemisms? We're talking about weed here. Yeah, weed. He was saying that his friend grows weed, and he grows the weed in such a way that it now smells like lemons. Now, I don't know if Cold Square was saying that his friend was the one who made the weed smell like lemons, or if he's just buying seeds on the open market where it says, hey, lemon-scented weed or whatever. But of course, there are tons of strains of weed out there. This is part of the weed culture, I suppose, is, ooh, I like this strain, I like that strain. And so we're using words like strain, cultivar, whatever the word is. I think people get this general idea of, hey, it's a variation of this other thing that you know. So you know of this particular thing, there are different strains, different cultivars, etc. So I was under the impression in the pre-call, I might have misunderstood both of you, that you guys were doing this yourself, you were creating your own cultivars. But from what you've just told me, both Hilly and Russell, you're not really creating your own cultivars. You're seed saving, but even then you're not seeing a great variation over time. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah. The only thing I would add is that, like Russell has been pointing out, the variation that you do see over time is specialization in particular areas and disease resistance in particular areas, depending on what diseases are common in those areas. So naturally, if you're growing garlic or whatever, naturally you're going to want to save the seeds or save the garlic of the ones that aren't diseased, right? So these ones have some sort of disease resistance than the other ones that did get disease. So you're going to plant those, and you can breed disease resistance or frost resistance into these plants. And that's really the only thing, that I've seen over time.
Interesting. So this idea that broccoli, as we know it, comes from cabbage, did you know that was the story? Because again, up until a week ago, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe it's wild mustard is the common story, that all of these brassicas, cabbage, kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, there's more too, all of those come from the wild mustard plant, and that we domesticated the wild mustard plant and then accentuated its traits to give you those different variations of those varieties. So pretty much the story is we domesticated, the wild animal and bred it to be our own.
Okay, so you knew that story. That's interesting. But in your experience, your relatively short time in agriculture, you've only been doing it for, what, I say a decade. Let's round up to a decade. That's still a relatively short period of time. You haven't actually, with your own eyes, seen one type of food become significantly different to its original form.
No, just, like I said, just, disease resistance and things like that. Yeah.
And how significant is that difference, so the disease resistance, like from the original one that you saw to the most recent one? Are we talking a dramatic change, or is it even then still a small change?
No, the ramifications of growing the crop are huge. If you can breed disease resistance and into the crop, it's huge.
I get that the ramifications are huge on a big sense, but just in terms of your experience, like what you have seen, have you seen much of a difference in any of these qualities of the plant?
As far as growing them, you have much more success compared to growing in a different variety.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like in the ideal, like ideally, you're trying to breed the qualities that make them easy to grow. I understand that. What I'm saying is, from what you've seen, from the original plant to the modern one, have you seen a big difference from the plant's original ability to resist disease versus the one today? Like with your own eyes, what change have you seen?
Yeah, well, the only thing I can say I've seen is in garlic, in saving garlic, and that's a pretty popular one for specializing in particular areas. Like people get a good crop of garlic, they save that garlic themselves, and if it's a good strain that's growing well in that area, it's highly coveted, and people are searching out these strains that grow well in particular areas.
Interesting. So you've seen like some, how do we say, like the following generations of the plant are stronger, they're better for growing, but you haven't seen the change of color or anything like that. But you're convinced that over enough time, humans can change the colors of the plants or even change the overall look of the plant. You're convinced that is possible?
No, I'm not convinced it's possible.
See, I was an hour ago because I thought you and Russ were telling me that you guys are doing, but now I've flipped back the other way and I'm thinking, well, the story is that humans can do this, and maybe they can. But do we have humans who have observed enough change over time that they could extrapolate from that? So this is what I mean, guys, when I say that I'm open-minded to things. Right now, as I stand here on the 6th of January, 2019, as more evidence comes to light, as more people say, oh, JLB, I've seen this, or I've documented that, or you have to look at this, or whatever. As more evidence comes to light, I can see this going one of two ways or anything in between. I could get to the stage where in a week or two, I'm starting to think that cultivars are a hoax in the same way that I think that dog breeds are a hoax. That is, there's no evidence that humans did it. It could go that way. Or we could get people on the call who say, no, JLB, I've been growing for 30 years. And in that time, let me show you the original pumpkin. Now look at this pumpkin. It's bigger. There's more, seeds in there, or there's more good food in there, whatever. See this change over 30 years. You can extrapolate that into saying that there's new breeds of food. And again, I'm not being technical with my terminology here, guys. I'm overtly just using these words in a general sense. I'm not sure if the meta element of what I'm saying here is coming through, guys. But what I'm saying is the idea of dog breeds, I'm skeptical about the story of that. The idea of food breeds, I'm now getting skeptical of that as well. Like, I don't know what to make of all of this. Let's go to Russell. Can you understand where I'm coming from with all of this? Like, I seriously don't know where on earth our food comes from and how much effect humans can have on it. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't know. I'm oblivious.
Yeah. Where does it come from? The original source? I know what you're saying. Like, of the, just to maybe just go down one avenue. Look, I've seen the reports where, they start doing stuff like trying to grow square tomatoes for hamburger breads and stuff like that. But maybe at the source of your question is saying, where do the original selections come from and how do they get there? Look, I really don't know. I say as a grower, I'm just using what's available for me and adapting it to my circumstance.
And so overall, the adaptations that you're seeing are improvements, but they're very mild adaptations, aren't they, relatively speaking, compared to the idea that you can create a whole new crop. The variations that you're seeing through seed saving, they benefit you in growing the food, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a mild adaptation compared to the idea of turning mustard seeds into kale or into broccoli, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. You get a better if you use cross an onion together, you'll get a slightly different maybe color, breed, taste, but it's still an onion.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff to me. Let's go to TNG because I think you're like me, TNG. You are more of a novice when it comes to agriculture, although I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. You've heard what we've been discussing for the last 20 minutes or so. What's your take on all of this? Take the conversation anywhere you want to take it. Hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from. I'm sort of trying to get my head around what is going on here.
Yeah, you're correct. I am a complete novice in this area, but obviously after listening to last week's show and what's been said today, and maybe mixing it a bit with a bit of evolution research from years ago, it certainly seems that we're talking about frankenfood, so the main the main gist of a frankenfood for me is the scare from the GMO foods and how bad they can change things and how bad they can be for people to consume. But realistically, how much are they actually changing things through genetic modification, and and how much are they being done through these natural methods that are being discussed now? And for me, I have seen some things years ago where it was mentioning the so stopping seeds from germinating again the next year. So, and obviously Monsanto, that's one of the big things they always state about Monsanto seeds, is that you have to buy them the one year and then buy them again the next year. So it's fascinating stuff for sure.
It is fascinating, and you can look at this from many different angles. And so if I can try and take a step back, because I'm not sure if the listener might be thinking, what is JLB on about? If we take a step back, I think most of us would agree that, say with humans, suppose you have a father who is tall and broad-shouldered and has a big nose. There's a good chance his sons will be tall, broad-shouldered, and have a big nose, or some combination of these things. Generally, not always, but you can see a correlation between the physical appearance of the father and the son, generally speaking. And so it's the same with the foods, okay? If you have an orange flower and you grow from that flower, its seeds or whatever, it's probably going to be orange as well. Like, we can all see that somehow information is passed on from one generation to the next, generally speaking. However, what I'm questioning is when we're told that Chihuahuas come from the common wolf, that a Labrador comes from the common wolf, that a Dalmatian comes from the common wolf, I'm wondering, do we have evidence for that? I haven't been able to find any. A week ago I find out the official story is that broccoli comes from either cabbages or mustard seed or something like this. And I'm very open to this. Up until an hour ago, I thought that's what some people on this call were doing. They were making their own freak foods. Turns out, you're not really, kind of just adapting. So in the same way that perhaps a lady wants tall sons, she might go for the taller father. This is not nature sort of adapting. It's just, well, there's something that's preferred. You're more likely to get it with this particular version in the next generation. So it is with food. This particular plant is a bit more spicy. I want more spice. Let's get more spice. But it's not really a change of fundamental form. And so what I'm now like the taller human is still the same species in a broad sense. So what I'm wondering now is how much actual change has been documented, whether it's dogs, whether it's vegetables, flowers, anything. How much change has really been documented? And obviously I've got a lot more research to do. Any listeners, if you've got any good information, please come on to next week's call. Let's discuss. This topic is fascinating. And then there's a lot more to this as well. Say with Monsanto, we're told that, they're evil, they're doing all of this, doing all of that. How do we know that they're not just selectively breeding, but they're just doing it at a much faster pace than the common person? How do we know that that's not what's going on? They tell us, we've got these scientists in lab coats, and they're fiddling with the DNA. Maybe they are. Maybe they're just selectively breeding faster than the common farmers can, and that's why they're getting stronger adaptations. And maybe GMOs and DNA itself is in fact a hoax. And part of that hoax is to help people think, it's science changing this. No, it's not. It's just multi-billion-dollar companies with more resources at their disposal to selectively breed their seeds with this kind of thing. So I'm sure some of the listeners will get what I'm trying to convey here. Some will think I'm crazy. That's perfectly reasonable. We'll talk more about all of this in next week's call, but we need to wrap up part one of this call, guys. So let me give each of you a chance to give your final thoughts on this topic. Then we'll wrap it up and come back for part two and talk about mud flood. But let's go first to Hilly in Minnesota. I've just been talking at turbo mode today. This whole topic fascinates me, Hilly, but you take a few minutes. Give us your final thoughts on Frankenfoods for this particular call.
Yeah, great. It really fascinates me as well. And I think it really boils down to if I believe in speciation, the idea of how new forms, forming distinct species, if that actually happens over time, if you can form new species. And I think that's really what it breaks down to. And I think we're really questioning if speciation happens. I sure have zero evidence to believe in speciation. So, but yeah, food is 100% the most important topic in my mind. I find it fascinating, especially in this realm, and I'm super happy to finally have a serious intellectual conversation about this. It's great.
Excellent. It's good to have you on board. Same with Russell and anybody who grows their own food. This is why having a website with, say, 100 people, if we're talking about food, there's bound to be a few of you guys who grow it, who work or whatever. You can share with us your own insights. So this is working out perfect, Hilly. Good to have you on board. Let's go to Russell in Queensland. Russell, we can talk about this again next week or next call, but for this particular call, final thoughts on Franken food.
Yeah, as Hilly was saying before, it's I think this idea of speciation, and where you go with adjusting something from an original clone or genetic gene pool is something that where did it all come from in the first place? I don't really know. It's like all this that we ask, where did it all start? Where was the Big Bang? All this sort of stuff. How did these things come about? So for me, when I'm looking at understanding seed saving, it's I put it back into the simplest things. Is that if you want to survive, right, you have to be available to either grow your own food, know how it grows, or be able to, uphold the possibility that at some stage you can put a seed in the ground and it can grow to exactly what it does. Okay. And that's what I would look at when we're talking about, Frankenstein foods, etc., is that once they start into this hybridization, which is, still on the lines of creating, a Frankenstein food is so much that it will not breed true to type. Okay. Once we get too far down that line, and that the ability to actually have any food out of a seed that you've got, that's where I see the danger in, this Frankenstein foods, right? It's not being able to produce your own food from pure seed strains that will grow true to type.
Excellent. And let me explain to the listeners too, you've just uploaded a photo from a drone shot of your little urban farm. And let me see if I can describe this to people. You've got what in your part of Queensland would be a regular sized block. In the city, that'd be a large block. They would knock your house down and build 4 townhouses, is what's happening in Australian cities, sadly. But it's a decent sized block, but not overly large. It's not a farm, but it's large enough. You've got, let's have a look here, probably 6 or 7 rows of food. I don't know the technical term, but you grow food in like lines, right? You've got maybe 6 of those that are about the same length as a cricket pitch, maybe longer, plus a few smaller ones. So you've probably got 200 meters of food growing in, what do you call these things? Lines? What's the word for these things?
We call them beds.
Beds.
Yeah, beds. Sorry, mate, I was unmuted. Yeah, beds. Yeah,
beds. Okay, so you've got several of these beds. What have you got? 200 meters worth of beds, roughly.
And I've never counted it, but I've got like 5 at 16 meters, a couple of 25 meters, by 800 wide. I've got 4 at 8 meters by 2 meters wide.
Mate, I reckon my guess of 200 meters sounds pretty much on the money. I'm pretty proud of myself because all I did was I looked at them and I thought that's the length of a cricket pitch. I know that they're 20 meters. Multiply that by 5 or 6, and so about 200 meters of bed. And let me explain this of garden bed, which I should have known. I feel like an idiot. So you've got your house sitting there on the block of land, and then you've got 2 beds down one side, 4 in front, and then another 4 or 5 to the side. So you've got a U-shape of garden beds around your house. So this is the house you live in. This is the house that is your residence, but you're growing all of this food around your own house.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's enough to feed yourself and your wife and your neighbours as well, apparently, and also sell to people.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Excellent. And this is what I mean, guys. It's like, if I want to talk about growing food, no disrespect to people who know the theory, because theory is very useful. But what I prefer to speak with, and this isn't just food, this goes for health, this goes for a lot of topics. I prefer to speak with people who are actually doing it and document what they do. And that's what Russell's doing here. He's showing you with a drone photo. This is his house. And what I might do, Russell, if we can get our schedules to overlap, before I leave Queensland, I might even see if I can just rent a car and come out and spend a day with you, just to come and record some footage and show people this is a regular person who grows his own food, and at 60 years old, Russell is looking in a picture of health, if you don't mind me saying.
I've got another year and a half on that now, don't forget.
Oh, that's right. Time keeps on moving on for all of us. All right, speaking of which, let's wrap up part 1 of the call. Let's go to TNG. TNG, you've been like sort of sitting here and listening. I'll let you get in your final thoughts for part 1. We'll wrap it up. Part 2. We'll be talking about the mud flood theory. There might be a few more people on the call because, you see, when we record calls, we've got the people on the panel, but we've got up to half a dozen people listening live. Maybe some of them want to join when we talk about mud flood theory. So if you want to listen to part 2, go and sign up as a member of johnlebon.com. But let's go to TNG from the Midlands to wrap up part 1, and I'll catch you guys in part 2.
Yeah, it's quite inspirational that there's the members on this site that can clearly show some of these ideas, and the experience in growing their own food, and that is amazing. But as for the Franken foods and wrapping this up, it just again just highlights to me that all science and scientism all the time, it's so blurry, and it's just there's so many hoaxes and so much fake stuff told us. It's unbelievable. We just do not know what's going on in this place. So there's an awful lot of research to be done by everybody by the looks of it. So yeah, that's about it for me. Thank you.